Hello and welcome to Healing Arts Talks. Today I have with me Ni'Ja Whitson. They are an artist, futurist, and medicine worker, and they are here to talk about their project, the Unarrival Experiments with the Illumination Catalogue. And this project is a multi-form project that centers the mysteries of dark matter, dark energy through a Black, queer, and trans-embodied lens. Hi, Ni'Ja. How are you?
I am so good, Fola. Thank you for having me. Wow, what an introduction. Thank you for
Thank you
that.
so much for coming on. I'm super excited to learn more about this project and your work. So my first question for you is, how did this project come about? How did this project begin to percolate, and what was the birthing of this project?
That's percolate is a really good word. I started, oh gosh, I can't remember exactly now, probably like 2016. And I was doing some research about an ancestor, my great grandmother on my maternal side, that I learned was a Black Indian root worker. I learned that it was, some years before, and I kind of stuck a pin in it and said, this is something you have to get back to, particularly because I do a lot of work with plants. So to know that that is a lineage I come from, I knew that, okay, I was probably in the middle of whatever art project at the time. It's like, okay, I need to spend time with this and with this ancestor, and we'll come back to it. So I started doing some research just about Black Indians, trying to look at where my lineage might have directly come through, what specific tribal nation, what specific area in the United States, work that I'm actually still doing. And as I was doing this research and doing ancestor work around really trying to connect with my great grandmother, unlike anything I'd ever experienced, I couldn't see a body. I couldn't even like get an understanding of gender. Her name was Willie, so there was something kind of like agender and genderqueer about that to begin with for me. So to not have gender become present felt like, okay, this is an ancestor that's queering in a particular way that feels, that's something that I am coming through. And eventually I came to know that actually was the teaching that this ancestor was trying to offer me, to actually not arrive, to be invisible in this magical way. So from there, I started looking at space, looking at nature, and other examples of that kind of technology. Like, how else does this kind of powerful invisibility show up? That brought me to dark matter and dark energy, and that has brought me to the universe of this work.
Wow, that's amazing. And this concept of dark matter, I've heard it before in like a performance studies concept of like a character who's not there but is spoken about. So what is dark matter in the context of your work?
It is everything. So I talk a little bit about not a little bit, a great deal about the science, which feels important to me, of thinking through the fact that there's this significant amount of matter in our universe that doesn't react to light, that scientists aren't exactly sure what kind of matter it is, or if, it could be something altogether that hasn't yet been discovered, but we're talking about something that takes up more of our universe than the things that we can see, touch, taste, and feel. So that idea, so that science is one way that it shows up, is to actually look at the ways, the timeline of dark matter being quote unquote discovered by scientists, and what has been happening in global diasporic Black history, how those things align. And it's quite interesting to see that there's connections there. So looking at the ways that some of those things intersect, looking at how Yoruba spirituality and other African indigenous practices and thought are also looking at the stars in a particular way, or looking at darkness in a particular way, and very similar to this idea. But for me, I'm making these connections between and our African traditions of how darkness is a birthing place, understood as its start, and is the important partner to what can be called light. In the same, or in a similar way of dark matter being integral to the universe, right? So I'm making the connections between those spiritual lineages, this scientific astrophysics, and of course, our folks have been doing work with the space and cosmos and futurism, and certainly artists, right, that have a long time. So yeah, I'm threading it everywhere, and it's teaching me a great deal.
Wow, that is so fascinating. And I love how you were bringing in all of these different indigenous cultures when you're talking about Yoruba culture and other African cultures. And it makes me think of ritual and how that's brought into your work. So can you talk a little bit about the importance of ritual and serving as this sort of conduit in your work and with this project?
It is everything. It's a center. It is a center. This work is, and all of my work, but certainly this work it's service. It is sacred. It is a calling to be in divine alignment with the sacred. And that shows up. Well, Illumination Catalogue is one of those aspects of the project. So the Unarrival Experiments is, I call it a constellation of artworks, because it's 6 different distinct and overlapping practices, projects. And Illumination Catalogue is one where trans folks, queer folks are specifically centered. We are centered in all of that work, for sure. But in Illumination Catalogue, the way that ritual is happening is I've been doing research about the murders of Black, trans, gender nonconforming, and intersex folks, and really BIPOC, TGNCI folk since 2018 to today, and started in 2020 traveling to sites where our BIPOC trans ancestors have been murdered, and conducting ceremonies on those lands. To uplift their memories, to honor their spirits, to call for protection in those spaces for all trans folks and future trans folks that may walk or be present in those spaces. And it becomes a way for my body to also be a kind of geography. Again, trans person, recognizing that the way that I move in my transness is a part of that geographic story. And the way that I engage ritual in that is a part of how we are added to the legacy of these spiritual practices. So that piece, ritual is what the work is. Ceremony is that work. And then I'm meeting with Black TGNCI folk, and talking with them about birth dates, rebirth dates, story of their names, the story of their transitions, and anything else that comes up in those conversations. And that too becomes ritual, right? It's a medicine exchange. I'm gifted the extraordinary experience of holding circle with family, and I hope that I'm gifting, or certainly intend to be gifting to folks, someone who is going to hold their stories with tenderness, that values them, that will uplift them, and that will continue into an exhibition and all kinds of other things. But in that work, it's about this one-on-one listening, like similarly to what you are doing, right? In your work of just of holding space with people to listen to stories that, at least in a media or kind of a social imagination, get reduced to loss. So it's important for me in Illumination Catalog specifically, that while I'm doing the ceremony work around losses, that there's also an emphasis on our lives and futurity, so that when folks think about trans folk, that it's not only about what we lose, right?
Yeah.
Because that's also somebody else's work. Like that's happening because of somebody else's problem. So to focus on folks' stories and lives in the future is another way that ritual happens.
Wow, that's so powerful. And while you're talking about that, I'm thinking of that connection of death, right? Honoring trans folks who have been murdered, and then creating the space for life for trans folk who are still with us to, talk about their births and rebirths. So how important is this like life death cycle in your work?
It has become more important than I thought it would ever be. Like, so great that you picked up on that. It's something that I continue to wrestle with a little bit. My dear friends thankfully mirror back to me that, that I'm a death worker, right?
Yeah.
So like, you're out here doing death work. I'm like, really? I never, like, that wasn't, so it wasn't necessarily something that I didn't set out to do that with this project at all, but even Illumination Catalog, it has taken me a while to really own that language. And I think it's important to do death work, to do grief work, to do transition work. And I would say that life and death cycles have been important in previous works and in general to me because of my commitment to engaged ancestor practice. To recognize that death is a part of our lives. It's a part of what our sort of divine inevitability, and to honor that honor people's transitions with care matters, right? Like the energy that we put into that matters, and what comes out of that really matters. So no matter what my work is about, there's always some kind of anchoring in the ancestral realm, and honoring of ancestors. So even if I'm not really focusing on life and death, it's happening in the ways that I approach that subject.
Yeah, because I definitely, as I was reading about your work, I definitely saw that connection of the death work and birth work and creating that space. And I was like, yes, it's so empowering to just have somebody on both ends of that doing that work and empowering folks in that way.
Right, absolutely. Because I would never, I can't imagine what's a lot of my mentors, their like way of moving in the world is so joy filled and joy, and are always calling me in to be mindful of how I ensure that joy is in my work and joy is, and the maybe the balance or finding the kind of equanimity between life work or birth work and death work feels like a way to ensure that joy happens there. That every transition is an opening, like something is also being birthed. So way of thinking like, yes, darkness actually births things when are planted under the soil. We don't get to see anymore what that work is, but we get an aspect of it when a plant comes above ground, right? So there's this way of thinking through for me of like, oh, all of this actually is necessary for joy to be possible.
And I love that, because then that joy, it's almost like a medicine in itself too, in that form of healing that you're bringing to your work. I can feel that, bringing that aspect to your work comes like a balm medicine. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
And I also wanted to talk about the Black Trans Cosmic Map, kind of thinking about that rebirth as well, and the role of science as well as astrology and the study of planets, like how that works. That sounded really fascinating as well.
Thank you. I love this. it's so much of this is about saying yes and knowing that a thing may make sense later or it might not, but it will all be important and necessary. And there's been some time where I've been like, I don't study astrology deeply, or I hadn't studied astrology deeply, and found myself looking at the first parts of this writing. I was looking at the lunar cycles, some of the kind of astrological activities connected to folks who had been murdered by the police and trans women, and started to notice some patterns of connections to full moon cycles and connections to particular kinds of astronomical phenomenon, and just being like, well, what might that mean for Black trans people that are living? There has to be, in the same ways that epigenetics will say that we carry trauma, generational trauma in our bodies. That for me, yes, if that is so, then also our joys, also our intelligences are carried in our bodies, right? Like it is real white supremacist to be like, you carry trauma and that's it. Like,
yeah, that's all.
All the rest of it. So when I think to the ways that, so if our folks, if there's a cosmic response to our passings, then there has to be a cosmic response to our births. It just other way to me. And what I've been finding, I've partnered with an astrologer named Oak Christopher, who is doing really sweet work around all of the, I'm giving these interviews and I give my notes of like, here's the time, here's the date, and and here, learning these elements about people's, so many like folks being born in the middle of floods, and people's rebirth stories happening in the middle of like major nature shifting events, and sharing that information, and then Oak and I having these conversations about what astrology is saying, and what is maybe shared or similar across folks. But that kind of, so this cosmic map becomes a way of not only looking at us on the geographic earthly plane here, like we are across this country, but also like what are the stars saying? Like we are out here, and we make an impact on a galactic level, just coming into the world and coming into the world again via our transitions. And that, what I hope from that is that folks get to see themselves as like superhero, galactic, worldly, powerful beings, and connected, right? Pieces that those connections are also powerful and important.
Wow, I love that. Just putting all of those pieces together and speaking back to that equanimity too, in that too, of like the cosmos, and then bringing it back down to earth, and where Black trans folks can really see that written in the stars and have that documentation as well.
Right, that's right. It's stunning. It's also so much fun, like to just look at this, like look at how beautiful this is. Like we're working on a website so that folks will be able to click on a planet and go, there are however many, folks who are connected to this planet, protecting, of course, people's identities, and so about, but having an immersive, interactive space for folks to see this data as a kind of cosmic body, and not a list, right? And the interviews, I've opted to keep them private because they're really, really tender. But we will be sharing, there'll be a kind of audio landscape created of all of the voices that have been shared over the years of this work as a part of an exhibition. So that's being built right now, but it is. I say it to. I'm sure I say it to every single person that I have a story sharing circle with, of just like, I feel like the luckiest person in the world that I get to do this, and that folks invite me. Really, that's the key. Invite me to do this with them.
Yeah, and it takes that level of trust, to open up in that way. So that says a lot about you and you holding space for others doing this work.
Thank you. Thank you for that. It's humbling because, people will let you know when you ain't doing what you need to be doing. And I like, I'm available to that. It's important. People ask hard questions of just like, where will this be?
Yeah.
Because it's from, having consent at the center is everything. So, folks are just like, I need to know more about what this is, where it will live, and how you're going to protect my information. I'm just like, yes,
Yeah.
and I wouldn't have it any other way. So the level of accountability that I need to hold it, that I am responsible to, is high.
Yeah.
Because a lot is at stake, right? We're talking about an epidemic of loss. To celebrate life, to push back against that feels like, the stakes are really high.
Yeah. It's a big responsibility. And thinking about loss, I want to kind of go back to the site-specific rituals that will be happening, and the importance of like being present in those spaces and honoring trans folks who have been murdered, and healing that space, and clearing that space, the importance of like being present in your body there.
Oh my goodness. I started them in Cleveland, where I was born, and it felt like a kind of coming out also to my ancestors. Some of my ancestors are buried in Cleveland, and my niece, who is an ally, accompanied me to every ritual site and was the photographer. And I don't spend a lot of time in Cleveland with my schedule and things. So I've not got to spend a lot of one-on-one time with her like that in a long time. So it was also the moment of us getting to know each other. And she's grown, right? She's in her 30s. So like, we're talking about at this point. But there was a moment at, this might have been the last site in Cleveland. I think it was the last site. We were outside of some projects, and it was one of the experiences where the ritual was happening pretty much where this transcestor had been murdered. And so, maybe just outside or a block away, because we're looking at safety and privacy if it's at a residence, all those kind of politics around it. So this one was parking lot, so I felt a bit more comfortable going directly to the site, but it's also a parking lot outside of people's homes. So there was a moment where, and I'm answering your questions in story, where I'm kind of in the work, and my niece so beautifully, her name is Ni'Ja, was really in her role as like capturing it. A very adult, mature pit bull. And it was interesting because there was a moment where I recognized we were being watched. And we're visitors. We don't live. My niece doesn't live anywhere near there. I don't think my family has ever quite lived on that side of town either. I just so happened to the place I was staying in wasn't too far away from there, so I was in this place is also, I don't know, maybe a 10-minute. I don't even think that far drive from where Tamir Rice was shot by the police.
Mm.
So there was all of this like energy and recognition of just like this is home, but this isn't my home. So
Mm.
I have to be hyper aware of what I'm feeling, what's happening around me, because that is the only one of those of the rituals so far that I've had another person with me.
Mm.
Has been using all the things I know to be like, I have to tend to this work, and I need to be present to what's happening around me because I'm by myself.
Mm.
And with this particular ritual, my niece was like in it, so I'm present to like us being seen and a dog coming out, and the dog kind of cocks its head and looks, and I'm like, okay.
Mm.
I don't want to alarm her. So I'm just staying in my work, and I see, the dog kind of moves away, and spirit is like, it's time to go.
Mm.
Start to finish up the things. And, I call my niece closer to me. I'm, still in finishing, just so that like I can calmly direct her to the car. But I get her close, and so she's close, and she's still taking pictures, and I'm looking out the side of my eye for the pit bull. So I finished, and I was like, okay, so we need to walk like quickly, but not run to the car. Like, we need to go. She's like, everything okay? I was like, we just need to get to the car. So we get in the car, and I share with her, you didn't see that dog? She's like, no, I didn't see a dog. And then, we're in the car, and the pit bull comes back out again, of course. So it was such, it was an important moment to learn, like, people, I think folks feel what's happening, especially if there's discomfort or concern about, what kind of juju are you out there doing?
Yeah.
I'm white, I'm burning things, I'm moving, sometimes I'm saying things out loud. Our people know, even if they don't practice, they're just like, I know you out there doing some stuff. Folks might not be comfortable with it, right? So I'm learning of just this could generate fear, or just upset for people, which puts me at risk, right?
Yeah.
So behave in a particular way when you're scared. So like this, I have to think about what my safety protocols are.
Yeah.
Making sure people know where I am, especially when I'm going by myself, of like, okay, this morning on this day, I'm traveling to X site. So, people know what's happened. And I've had experiences similar to that in other places where I had to be like, one of them outside of a trap house in Jacksonville, Florida. And these are happening at basically sunrise, right? People responding that are up at 6:30 in the morning, right? So it also feels a little safer, just like people aren't necessarily out in the same way. Florida is different because it's hot there, right? So folks are like, have to go out early because midday comes, there's nothing you can do because of the heat. So it's just all the things you learn about sight and all of that, and the being able to drop in so deeply in a space that I can be in the work, present to my own safety. I mean, and also listening, right? Because spirit is the reason why I have been.
Yeah.
Like, I'm very clear. Like, yes, I'm listening, but I'm also listening to the divine being like, it is your time to go. Like, no.
Like, let's go. Yeah, that's so important. Like, I didn't even think about like all of the things that have to go into that while you're doing this work, and being mindful of where you are and all of those elements. That takes a lot.
Absolutely. It is. When I leave, I spend a lot of time taking care. No matter how many I do, I try to block out a week to give myself time to land in that space, to learn it, listen to it, be a mindful visitor. So it's, not to like do a task list that I'm checking off.
Right.
Oh, I do my ritual and I leave. Like, no, I need to go, I need to settle, I need to hear the space, I need to witness this space. I do another round of research, particularly being what is more local. Like sometimes what I learn about what has happened to this ancestor is different because I'm physically there. To make space to connect with local organizations and activists, not at all ever asking someone to come because they have done enough grief work.
Right.
But just to uplift that there are people local to that place that are doing life-saving work all the time, right? I'm coming in and out, but there are folks who are there that are doing that on the ground all the time for folks. So to ensure that I uplift their names and also just like, hey, I'm here doing this work. And then after them, trying to have time to do nothing and to grieve if I need to grieve. My God, Florida was great because I could go to the ocean after rituals and bathe and cry, and so that I release what needs to. I'm not, so that I don't accumulate grief and trauma and take them around the country with me. Work of like this of letting go what needs to be released. And their last thing I'll say, so I know I'm talking a lot about it. I'm collecting, I'm an herbalist. It's a part of my spiritual practice and medicine practice. So I'm making tree essences of every space as well. So there's the other work of when I leave the site with the materials I've collected of like having these pieces. So I stay in prayer. The ceremonies are essentially the entire time that I'm there, because once I leave, it's my own release work, but then also creating these essences that I make while I'm there. With them. It's extraordinary. Sometimes it's frightening, for sure. And I know that I'm held. There's no way I could do it without that. My goodness. No way.
Wow. Ooh, this is so powerful, just hearing about the work that you're doing and your process. I'm so honored for you to come on tonight, and thank you so much. And I want to give people an opportunity to connect with you. So how can they connect with you in the work that you're doing?
They can connect on the interwebs, Instagram, Illumination Catalogue, spelled GUE, and also via email, illuminationcatalog@gmail.com. The NWA project is my kind of like umbrella Instagram, but Illumination Catalogue is a space dedicated to this particular project, and updates are there. And if people would like to be interviewed or would like to do one of the story shares, they can email or they can DM, Instagram, or have questions, or just also would like support around any grief work. We're here for that.
That's wonderful. Well, I'll definitely leave all of that information in the description box down below so folks can connect with you. Ni'Ja, thank you so much. Yes, down below. All the emotions. Thank you so much for coming on, and thank you for sharing your work. Thank you for the work that you're doing. It's so important, and look forward to continuing to connect with you, and thank you.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you for having me. Thank you so much for the work that you do.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you to everyone who's watching.